Welcome to the editing section. In this section, we're going to be professionally editing our photos right on our phones using an app called Lightroom CC. And Lightroom CC is fantastic. We can do everything right there on our phone and we never actually have to touch a computer, so it's a great on-the-go tool. So if you don't have Lightroom CC, just go on over to the App Store and just type in Lightroom and it'll just come up there at the top. So just push Lightroom and then go down and you'll see Adobe Lightroom CC. So if you haven't downloaded it already, just go ahead and click Get. And if not, if you do already have it, just click on Open. So when you open Lightroom, you won't have anything in it. I have a bunch of photos of friends here that I've taken, but if yours is blank and you need to actually upload a photo to Lightroom, you can just click on this button in the bottom right-hand corner and you can select it from your camera app. So once you have some photos in here, we're just going to select one and start editing, and I'll show you around Lightroom. So let's just click on this one of Sarah maybe. This is the one that I'm going to do. You can pick any photo you want and follow along. This is a photo that Sarah took with her phone, setting it up on a desk, kind of propped up against a couple things. The room had some nice lighting in it, so I think it came out pretty good, but we're going to make it pop a lot more. So first comes first is crop. So we're going to make sure this is cropped correctly. We can kind of drag and resize any way that we want, on the sides. So I'm just going to pull this down and maybe crop it about like that. Then you can actually skip these other two buttons, the profiles button and the auto button. I don't ever use those. And just go right to this light button. So once you go to light, you can change the exposure here. And if you need to undo anything, there's a button up here at the top. It's got this little back arrow. You can just click on that and undo what you just did. So you can play with the contrast. You can make it a lot flatter, or you can make it really punchy. You can play with just the highlights. So these are the lightest parts of the photo. So her shirt is pretty white. You can see I'm boosting that, or I'm bringing it way down. You can see it's kind of affecting her skin tone as well. And as well as the shadows, these are the darker parts of the image. So the wall behind her, you can see I'm bringing the shadows out so that there's almost no shadow, or I can make them very dark and it almost completely makes that background black, if you can see that. So I'll undo that, go back to light. And whites and blacks are relatively the same thing. They just kind of can give you an extra punch here or there. So you can play around with those as well. So for her sake, I'm going to say let's do a little bit of exposure pop, maybe a +9, and maybe do more of a punchy contrast. We'll do a +21. And highlights, I actually like what it's doing to her skin when I bring it down. So I'll do like a -15. Shadows, I'm actually going to bring those darker, maybe a -20. And I'm going to leave highlights and blacks alone. So now let's go over to the color tab. So in the color tab, you can change the temperature of the photo to be very warm, or you can bring it to very cold. So obviously less is more with this. You really only want to go maybe -15 to +15 in either direction. Maybe not even. That's still really warm there. So I'm going to go with a little bit cooler, maybe a -11. And tint, kind of the same thing. These are actually all, temperature and tint are adjustments for lighting. So if you take a picture that's in a room that has very orange color lighting and it comes into your camera looking like that, you can actually give it more blue in order to counteract it, and the result will look a little bit more neutral like that, more towards the 0. So in this case, I did like the lighting coming out of the camera, so I'm actually going to drag this to a -11 just because I like that cool color profile. Now we can go to vibrance, and vibrance will kind of bring the saturation up in different areas. It's more of a smart saturation, so it'll bring up areas that need to be brought up and leave already boosted colors alone. So I mess with vibrance a lot more than saturation. Saturation, on the other hand, brings up all of the colors. So you can see it really punches out a lot more. It'll bring up every color in the photo and make it much more saturated. So I'm actually going to give this a little bit of vibrance. Let's say a let's do 50. Now, moving on to the effects tab. We're just going to click on that, and now we've got clarity, dehaze, and vignette. So, whoops. So let's start with clarity. Clarity kind of gives your photo an extra punch, as you can see. It sharpens and increases the contrast at the same time, gives it a really cool chiseled look. Or if you drag it the other way, it gives you more of a dreamlike look. I'm not so much of a fan of this side, so I typically go this way with it. And again, less is more with this. You don't want to completely boost out the photo. It may look really cool here, but you can see there's a little bit going on with some noise here at the top. You can see lots of TV noise looking particles up there. So that happens when you use too much clarity. So I'm going to do about a 35. Dehaze, if you have a lot of fog in your photo, if you're shooting outdoors, you can mess with this. I typically don't touch it whenever I shoot indoors. And vignette will kind of darken the edges of your photo or lighten them if you so choose. So if you drag it to the left, it'll darken them. I like a little bit of vignette, especially when shooting indoors on a solid background. So I'm going to leave that at a -25. And you can also adjust the vignette settings. So the midpoint will bring those edges all the way out to the corners, or it'll bring them all the way in. I actually am going to leave that at 0. I liked how it was. Feather is how sharp or faded that the vignette is going to be. So obviously you bring it all the way to the left and it's very sharp, or you bring it all the way to the right and it's completely faded. So I'm actually going to leave it again at 0. I'm not going to mess with that. And same with roundness. You can control how square or how round that vignette is. I don't really mess with any of these settings going down. Now that we've covered those main 3 sections, I'm actually going to hop back to the color tab and show you something really cool. So if you go to the color tab and you click on this mix button up here at the top right of that menu, and now what we can do is select individual colors and change either their hue, saturation, or luminance. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to select her skin tone, which is kind of an orange, and what I can do is make it a lot more red, which obviously looks ridiculous, or a little bit more green, again looks ridiculous. But the point is, if you want to change shirt colors, if you want to change the colors of trees in the background, you could, let's say, select green, and you could change the trees to more of a yellow or a green. There's no trees in this photo, obviously, but this is a really cool tool. You can literally change colors. So if she was wearing a yellow shirt, I could make that shirt more red or more green if I wanted to. And I can also change the saturation. So again, I'll show you with her skin tone, I can change the saturation of just her skin tone. So I can make her skin completely black and white if I want. And luminance changes the light. So I can make just her skin tone really light, or I can make it a lot darker. So you can mess with that as well. And you can do this with every color: yellow, green, light blue, dark blue, purple, whatever you want. Just to show you, I will go to another photo I have here of Nick, and I'm going to change Nick's red shirt. So I'll go to color, go to mix. I'm already on red, so I could make it kind of a purplish pink color, or I can make it more yellow. So you can see it's affecting his skin a little bit, but I'm mainly just hitting that one color. Alright, so we'll go back, go over to Sarah's photo. So that was the mix tab in color, which is really cool. Detail, you can mess with how sharp your photo is. I typically don't touch that. As long as you've got your focus right, then you won't even need that. And you really won't have to mess with any of these other settings like geometry or optics. And the next thing we're going to go over is creating user presets, which is literally my favorite tool in Lightroom. So I'm really excited to teach you about that. So before we go, I will show you, if you hold your finger down on the picture, you can see that's what it looked like before, and that's what it looks like after. Really adds a nice punch. It's crazy the difference.